Prison story time. My name is Michelle Fortier. I used to work in the Florida Department of Corrections as a mental health person. First things first, let me clarify. I'm going to be using pseudonyms. I can't keep saying inmate. That seems degrading to me. And I also clearly cannot say these inmates' names. So I'm going to get started with the story today of how I got grabbed by an inmate. I already have a whole other video about how much I hate psych cells, how much I hate Shaws, how much I hate psych emergencies. And I used to try to nip that in the bud before it got started. So we have inmates that would come in with these big, long histories of these problematic behaviors of declaring psych, declaring psych, declaring psych. And 99.99999% of the time, it was because they owed money on the compound. This particular one, he got off the Bluebird, and oh my word. Psych emergency after psych emergency, Shaws after Shaws after Shaws, self-harm, all this other jazz. And I was like, we're going to nip this in the bud. So I had security bring him down, and we had our little come to Jesus. At least I thought it was a come to Jesus. Turns out it was not a come to Jesus. And there was the psych emergency, psych cell, blah, 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 blah. So finally broke him of that bad habit. And then he comes down for his regular appointment, and he's like, look, I can't stay on this compound. I said, look, then you need to check in PM. I don't know what to tell you. And I already knew he wasn't going to get PM. It was his problem. It was something that he caused himself to suffer with. He had some cell phones knocked off at another prison in order to save himself. At least that's what I understood. So I was like, you're going to have to learn how to deal with that. We'll figure it out, though. And he's like, no, I'm going to go close management. I was like, you do you, boo. So his idea to try to go close management was to climb a tree or grab a staff member or do something ridiculous like that. And I was like, well, I hope you don't do any of those things because they all seem ridiculous. I'm going to suggest that you just go lay back, catch a minor DR if you want to go to confinement and think a little bit more about this. But this going psych, clearly it has not worked because you've gone psych and you still have the same problem. And I'm not going to reinforce something that is not a healthy way to cope. So anyway, so he's like, okay, fine. And I was like, okay. So I'm going across the hall from mental health to medical records. And I all of a sudden see this big blue shape coming towards me. And I was like, what the hell is this shit? What is going on? And he comes and he grabs me. Now, mind you, this is a full waiting room of all these inmates in these blue uniforms. I see this blue uniform coming towards me and I just scream. He grabs a hold of me, and thank goodness there was a captain on the other side of triage, and the captain comes out and is like, inmate, let her go. And then he goes and he sprays that inmate. And then the inmate's like, oh, I can't believe it. You knew I was going to grab you. I was like, what the hell are you even talking about? I didn't know that you were that dumb. Judgment. And I don't care. Who the hell grabs a staff member? And that is not the end of the story. So he grabs me. I yell. I run to the other side. I have now all this paperwork to do, all this drama because this inmate grabs me and he holds me. It was not a pleasant experience in the least. And in fact, it was pretty damn scary. So all this paperwork, have to speak to warden, assistant warden, HSA, blah, 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 blah. And then that evening we have an event with staff. And I go to the event and everybody's like, oh, 40, are you okay? And I was like, I guess. I mean, nothing terrible happened except I'm like nervous about this. Like, I've not had this happen. And I had been working in corrections from 2011 already. And I believe this happened in 2017. And inmates were coming up and being like, Miss Fortier, please don't quit. Please don't quit. And I was like, I'm not quitting over this. Like, this is part and parcel. This has always been a risk. I do run my mouth like I can fight. So I expected something like this. And at the same time, it's not pleasant. I didn't want it. It was not an experience that I wish on anybody. So anyway, this particular one, like I said, pseudonym, we'll call him Smith. Smith is still on my caseload, and I don't get rid of and push my problems onto other MHPs. I just don't feel that that's right, correct. I have a lot more experience. I also tend to lean into situations as opposed to lean out from situations. So when I would have problems, I would deal with those problems. I always saw it as a challenge, like, okay, how am I going to deal with this one? And like I said, years of experience, I could tolerate risk, I could tolerate these crazy behaviors. And in fact, I did like a little thing about like why I do the work that I do. And part of it is I really enjoy problem solving. I have a great amount of empathy, I have a great amount of understanding, I have a great amount of seeing the world through other people's eyes. And I also really just like problem solving. So this just seemed like another problem to me. So, anyway, still my inmate. And when they're an S3, I would still need to see any S3 inmates within 5 days after use of force. So I go down to confinement and I have security staff with me. Duh, this inmate just assaulted me. He grabbed me without my permission. And he's like, Miss Forty, I can't believe you don't trust me. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? You can't believe I don't trust you. You just grabbed me. He's like, you knew I was going to grab you. I was like, on what planet do you think I knew you were going to grab me? Do you think I want you grabbing? Do you think I want to be touched by any inmate on this compound? You have got me effed up. So he wound up going in and out of the psych cell. I still had to continue to deal with him because, once again, psych cells were my job. And we had a whole come to Jesus about that. He apologized. I think he understood what he did was wrong. And for whatever reason, we had a good therapeutic rapport. And he wound up writing me. So he wound up getting transferred to another institution, still didn't go see him. And the crazy part is, another story, I got spit on another time. Now, the spitting on, I didn't feel was that big of a deal. It wasn't that scary. And yet I got a letter from DOC about how I got assaulted. This one, the inmate grabbed me, held me, and that wasn't considered anything terrible. And I didn't even get a letter from DOC about that one. And that one was a whole lot scarier than the spitting, but whatever. So he winds up getting a negative transfer. And a funny story about that one is I was basically the only one that he would listen to. For some reason, he would listen to me. So he was refusing to go on the Bluebird to get transferred over to his new institution. And the officer's like, just get 48 down here. And I just go down and I'm like, Smith, what are you doing? Get on the Bluebird. And he's like, okay. No, the Bluebird had already left. Let me rephrase that. He had a van at that time, and I had to tell him to get on the van for direct transport to the new institution. And all I had to do was go down and be like, get on the van. And he's like, okay. And he just gets on the van, winds up at a new institution. He winds up writing me these big, long letters. And the interesting part is you'd be like, oh, hey, Michelle, do you think that he had some inappropriate feelings about you? Funny part is he was a gunner. And he never gunned me. He would gun everybody else, but never gunned me. And it was never romantic. I don't know how he saw me, but it wasn't as a romantic partner. Mentor, maybe, guidance, friend. I have no idea, but never as a romantic partner. Interesting. This guy was an interesting case. So I wound up writing me, sent a letter to my institution from his new institution. I had to write a DR for an attempt to establish a personal relationship because I was staff. And then he wound up sending me another letter through the mail. And that one, he laughed about the last DR that I wrote him for an attempt to establish a relationship. He's like, ha, 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 ha. And then I was like, oh my Lord. So then I had to write him another DR. And I think he wrote me again after that. And I was like, what the hell? And I felt like it was going to be a, what was the name of that movie where the patient shows up at the psychiatrist's house? And so when I left the prison system, I did wind up reaching out to him. And I wrote to him and I gave him advice and I gave him coaching and I told him about skills to use and I helped him EOS. And it was all in the hopes that he, for the love of God, didn't show up at my house. And lo and behold, I kept like reinforcing, I am a mental health person. I am here to give you coaching. I am here to direct you in the correct direction. Here are skills. And I would send him in workbooks and handouts, all about the different DBT skills that he could use and blah, 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 blah. So didn't show up on my house. Thank God. Didn't show up at my office. Thank God. He did reach out a couple times after he got out of prison. And gratefully, it was just for advice. all that. And so that is my story about how I got grabbed in the prison system, how I dealt with it. And the advice that I can give in this is I chose not to be afraid after the incident happened. I chose to approach something that was scary. So that way I didn't get in my head that all inmates were scary, that this was something that I couldn't recover from. I approached it, and I approached it, I think, in a safe way. When I thought that there was going to be continued problems after he released from prison, I made sure that I kept reiterating, do not show up at my house, do not do any of these things, do not think that there's more going on than there is. I'm here to give you coaching. I am a mental health person. And it seemed to work. And I hope he's doing well. I hope he's staying out of trouble. I hope he's doing the right thing. Um, and yeah, that's my story about how I got grabbed in the prison system. Any comments, anything like that, leave them below. And like I said, I think it all worked out, and I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about certain types of behaviors and how to nip them in the bud.